Welcome to the second night of the Earshift Music Festival, proudly supported by Sydney Improvised Music Association. I'm your host, Jeremy Rose, and I'm really looking forward to another great night of music featuring the wonderful guitarist Hilary Geddes, who's performing live from Sydney, Australia. Hilary is one of her generation's most exciting players, and she's worked with some of Australia's jazz luminaries, including Mike Nock and Barney McCall. And I've been fortunate to share the stage with her in a number of projects, more recently, including the Shift Orchestra's show at the Sydney Festival earlier this year. So, without further ado, let's hand it over to Hilary, and we're going to have a little interview at the end of this, and we'll have a bit of an artist chat. So, see you at the end. Enjoy. Well, I could listen to that all night, and I don't know about you, but it's raining really heavily here in Marrickville. And where are you? Are you in Randwick?
Yeah,
It's
yeah, pretty close by. But it's been raining almost all day, so
Well, that's the good thing about performing online. You don't have to worry about audience turning away when a night is goes awry from the weather. But no, thanks so much for that brilliant performance. Yeah, and on that topic of live streaming, I mean, it seems like you've been doing quite a bit. I was just reading you did some live streaming with Tim Minchin, and I know that you did a live stream performance just yesterday as well. So I'd like to hear your thoughts on your experience performing, literally to a computer. I mean, do you think it's a poor substitute for the real thing, or is there some sort of value in this kind of performance that's meaningful and distinct in its own way?
I definitely think it's meaningful, but it is distinct from performing to a crowd of people who might be packed in together in that regard. But I'm really lucky tonight. I'm actually not performing only to your face, Jeremy, but there is someone else in the room, wonderful cinematographer Nikki Johnson, who's perhaps less wonderful cinematographer given that hand movement. But yeah, so in a way, maybe tonight's performance was a slightly hybrid, if intimate set in that regard. But yeah, look, my experience of live stream has really varied. Tonight, given that I had to be in control of my own sound, it's probably the most lo-fi I've ever been. The first live stream I ever did was with the Hilary Geddes Quartet last year, and that was with Peter Nelson on sound. And he's a bit of an institution around Sydney, I think, in terms of being able to capture that live energy of performance in that regard. And then, as you mentioned, the Tim Minchin thing, that was a totally different ballpark together. There were so many people on crew and on sound to make sure, or to try to get it all happening, and lots of panning shots, and yeah, it was kind of amazing how they were able to put it all together.
Yeah, and for those that are at home, just so you know, we had a bit of a tech check earlier at 6 o'clock, and we worked out that the best quality was actually through Hillary's iPhone. But I guess not you're not only concerned about the music and the sound, but I mean how the room looks and lighting and how does that affect you the way you play? Are you concerned about that or
Um, I think the goal often in for me sometimes when I'm performing is I know it can be I know I'm maybe on the right track if I'm sort of perhaps losing my awareness of surrounds. But in terms of tonight's setup, again, I can't really take credit. Cinematographer Nikki Johnson also on set design as well in this regard. I wish I could say that my practice setup was looked this good, but maybe I'll keep it this way going forward.
No, I mean it looks really great. Well, let's talk about the music that you just played for us then. Uh, I mean, I loved the way it progressed from series of chords, and there was some soundscapes and some melodic material. So how much of that was sort of composed? How much was improvised? And sort of how did you transform through the work?
Yeah, it's a great question. The piece I played is a piece of mine called When the Waves Blew Backwards. And the reason why I actually chose to play it tonight was because initially when we spoke about Earshift Festival earlier in the year, we talked about me doing it with another project with the incredible Hanano Fujisaki and wonderful Lawrence Moras on tenor saxophone and piano. And the first time we played together was actually within a larger ensemble, Rain Patterns, which is led by Chloe Kim, who you'll also be hearing from at this festival. And it's a piece we performed earlier this year, and I really hadn't played it for quite a long time, and it was written for a small ensemble with, at least one horn, and Yeah, I thought I would return to it in part because a lot of the way I write is obviously on the guitar. Um, but I thought it would be kind of an interesting exercise when you conceptualize something for a larger group. How did I came up with all those ideas on this instrument, but how do I guess, negotiate trying to pay on, like, yeah, homage to the different parts, I guess, with just guitar. So yeah, there were definitely large chunks that were improvised, certainly more improvised than um, the way we've played it as a group in Rain Patterns, but there are ultimately three movements to this piece. So the piece is about those southerly busters that come up along the south coast. And one time I was camping with my grandmother, and I was in the water at the time when the weather shifted. So, it's not a particularly profound title. The waves literally did blow backwards. So I rushed back to the campsite to help her out. She's in her late 80s now. And anyway, tent poles going flying and so forth. But she had it all pretty under control, and we were sort of standing there trying to keep everything attached to the ground. So the arc of the piece was the same, starting with sort of brew, I guess, sort of that beginning, and then, like you said, the melodic material is kind of when we play it as an ensemble, is usually kind of the biggest part of the piece, which is kind of hard to emulate with one guitar, but that's called Batten Down the Hatches. And then at the end, with sort of the strumming, it's called Wash, which is sort of that aftermath of, yeah.
Right. Yeah, I was sort of expecting a little. I mean, it's a very Zen kind of a title,
Yeah.
but I mean, I guess it makes sense, and it's actually very programmatic. Um, um, I mean, one feature about your playing is I can really hear how you logically construct your musical statements, and it's very much in a kind of compositional way. I was thinking perhaps you could speak a little bit about your work as a sound composer. I know you've been awarded a few commissions, one from the Tura Adapts project, and some from the local council cultural grants to do a sound mapping project. So, has this kind of work really informed your improvising, or vice versa?
Yeah, for sure. It still feels really new in terms of my practice. I really have to thank, I guess, Vanessa Tomlinson primarily, um, sort of hearing her speak about sound mapping and how specific sound can be to a time and a place. And then if you return to that place, it may be different, it may be the same, and sort of trying to capture um, that that sense of place or that evocation um, kind of in that moment and responding in an environment um, I found really intriguing and I don't know, I guess very creatively fulfilling and something that I'm still kind of exploring. I guess in part because I think place is so important in terms of how we relate to other people, how we live, and of course, more broadly within Australia. I mean, I'm broadcasting to you on unceded Gadigal land, so I think reckoning with being like a white settler in this country is obviously really important as well. Um, but yeah, I think when we leave place, um, and how can one? There are so many different ways one can then try to sort of capture that feeling in terms of music. So in terms of composition, outside of improvising in place, yeah, I think it's really they both inform each other, I guess. Um, I don't know if that was a bit of a rambling answer. I don't know if I made any sense at all just then.
Well, I was actually wondering if the concept of space and representations of landscape are something that you've really thought about. I know that you come from uh, central west or western New South Wales, from Griffith, and I mean, just I imagine when I'm listening to you playing some of those long drives along those roads, and I guess there's kind of it could be said that there's some sort of like a Australian sense of landscape in what the way you play. I mean, is that a conscious thing, or it's just kind of a natural evocation?
I think it's something that definitely was a bit of a natural thing, and it's something that I've sort of been increasingly thinking about and trying to actually, I guess, create a vocabulary around. But I don't think it's necessarily specific to me. Like I remember reading, oh, this was years ago, so I'm sorry, I can't remember who wrote this, but someone wrote an academic paper on the necks, and I guess like in terms of an Australianness of their sound and the idea of space and why, like obviously, spatiality in their work, and relating it back to the Australian landscape. So I think I don't think it's necessarily specific to me in that regard, but it is it is something I do think about now, but it's not necessarily. I don't necessarily go into it consciously thinking this is what I'm going to do if I'm doing, I guess, an improvisation. But yes
Cool.
and no is my short
Yeah,
answer.
that's a good way to answer. And I love your guitar sound. I was just wondering, I mean, are you using standard tuning on that? And I don't know, can you tell us a little bit about the instrument that you're playing on?
Yeah, sure. So I was using standard tuning, although my D string is a little bit out of tune. I think you can probably hear that the whole time. So I tried to lean into it a bit, so it sounded a bit more on purpose. But this guitar actually it's falling apart a little bit. It definitely needs to be set up. The neck, every couple of years, the neck starts to separate from the body. It's a really old guitar from 1962. So it just means that the action and the intonation goes a little bit wild. So when I noticed the tuning just then sort of not really holding in the course of 15 minutes, it's it definitely needs work. But I'm playing it tonight in part because I love the sound, but also I thought it was kind of indicative of a home performance because this is the guitar that I primarily play when I am at home. Mainly because I don't usually have to plug in to play it as it's a semi-hollow. For the guitar nerds out there, it's an Epiphone Sorrento, if you will, from 1962. So I thought maybe tonight's performance might have been a little bit of an indication of maybe what I'm doing when the camera's off, perhaps. And you saw me at times perhaps struggling, and that's also what happens when the cameras are off. So.
Cool. And you've been busy as a band leader yourself, and I believe you've got a new record that you're keen to plug tonight. And I can see something on the on the stand next to you. So perhaps you can tell us about
I said earlier.
what that beauty is. Yeah.
I'm going to go closer. This is a beautiful piece of vinyl, mixed, mastered, and recorded by James Kennedy, Henry Rasmussen from ABC Jazz also lent a hand on the day. It's my first album under my own name, Hilary Geddes Quartet, and I'm really proud of it. We recorded it in 2019, and it features the band Alexander Inman Hislop on drums, Max Alduca on the bass, and Matt Harris on piano. They all sound really, really amazing, and kind of due to some sound bleeding issues, Max and Alex actually didn't get to see each other for the duration of the recording. They didn't have any sight lines. So sometimes when I listen to that and when they align, it's just remarkable to me that they, such beautiful musicianship. So buy it for them, I would say.
That's the magic.
Alex and Matt, it's really great playing from them.
And even though it's not out on Earshift Music, I'm going to say that's a great record, and you should go buy it. And I've been listening to it a lot, so congrats on that.
Cross promotional.
So you can listen to it digitally on all streaming platforms, but if you want to pick up the vinyl, make sure you check out Hilary's Bandcamp page, I assume.
That's correct.
Right on. Cool. So thanks again, Hilary. It's been really wonderful that you could join us tonight. But we might call it an evening, and tomorrow night we're going to be joined by Brisbane pianist Sean Foran. So we'll be back same time, same channel. So thanks again to all of you, and I hope you have a good evening. Thanks again, Hilary.
Thanks so much, Jeremy. Thank you.
Take it easy. Thanks. See you.